Hey folks, tonight we dive into the sharp-edged life and dangerously peculiar career of a man whose laughter came with a catch. Before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here, and drop a comment to let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from across the globe. Now dim the lights. Maybe crack a window for a breeze to carry the chill. And let's slip into tonight's tale together. You're born in a muddy hamlet somewhere deep in the English countryside, far enough from London that maps shrug and call it a day. The kind of place where pigs outnumber people, old women curse the rain, and your family's wealth is a single pot, a rusty knife, and a collective distrust of strangers. Your father's a tanner, reeking of hides and sweat, his hands stained brown from years of scraping skins. Your mother's a tanner too, but with sharper elbows and a tongue that cuts like flint, her scolding a daily sermon louder than the village priest's. You're the fourth son, the feudal equivalent of an extra spoon useful in a pinch, but nobody's betting on you. They don't name you right away. Names cost hope, and hope's scarce as a dry summer. Instead they call you Little Fool, which feels warm until you notice your brothers are Big Ox, Strong Sow, and Grim Hound. Not a lineage destined for ballads. Life is rough, a grind of mud and hunger. You chase rats for sport, eat barley mush when it's not moldy, and learn fast that the world doesn't care about you or comfort, or dreams. Your home's a one-room hovel, its thatch leaking, stuffed with siblings, cousins, and the constant drone of domestic grumbling. Nobody speaks of ambition here, only the weather, the price of ale, and whether the Lord's tax collector will come early this year. Your village boasts one priest, one donkey, and 30-odd rumors at any given time. One of those rumors whispers of a distant castle, a stone giant aglow with torches, feasts and lords who never shovel dung. You hear this tale while gnawing a crust of bread, squinting to imagine a hall of polished oak, its walls hung with tapestries brighter than your mother's best shawl. Then comes the year of blight. Crops rot in the fields, the stream stinks of dead fish, and your father starts eyeing you like a peddler sizing up a lame mule. You're old enough to haul buckets but too young to argue. That's when the stranger arrives, a wiry man with patched boots, a grin too wide for trust, and a cloak that's seen better days. He claims he can give you a future, a place in a lord's hall where laughter's coin and wits are trade. Your parents nod, their faces tight as purse strings. You don't grasp the deal, just that it involves you, a sack of rags, and a trek to somewhere grand. You think you're off to learn, maybe to sing or juggle for pennies. Technically you are. You're about to learn that being born a nobody was just the prelude. The real it's going to cost you every ounce of your nerve, your pride, and maybe your neck. It starts with a loaf of bread, or rather its absence. Your family hasn't eaten properly in weeks. Your mother's boiling nettles into something she calls soup, her scowl daring anyone to complain. Your father glares at the muddy fields like they owe him a harvest, his hands twitching as if he could wring grain from the dirt. The village mutters of famine, of children wasting away, of pigs too thin to slaughter. In this quiet panic, the family takes stock of its assets. No pigs, no land, no heirlooms worth a copper. But there's you. A fourth son's a luxury in lean times. Big Ox is set to inherit the tanner's knife, his broad shoulders already bent from work. Strong Sow's betrothed to a blacksmith's son, a hulking lad with fists like anvils and a laugh like a donkey's bray. Grim Hound's good at breaking things, which passes for promise in a village short on hope. You've got a knack for mimicking the priest's droning sermons and not crying when you fall in the mud. A dangerous talent when your parents whisper late into the night, their voices low and sharp. You saw him before, dressed like a scarecrow with ambition, patched cloak, sly eyes, hands that haven't touched dirt since the last king's coronation. He brings a few coins, not enough to matter, but just enough to sting if they weren't for you. You think maybe you're headed to a monastery to chant psalms, or a market to juggle for bread. Maybe this is your grand escape, a ballad-worthy arc from rags to riches, like the tales the peddlers spin. Your mother hugs you, her grip too tight, her eyes wet but unyielding. Your father looks at the ground, muttering about duty. You're sold, not into slavery, that'd be crude. They say, this is opportunity, a selfless act they'll praise at your grave, assuming anyone remembers your name by then. You leave the village with a sack, a lump in your throat, and a flicker of hope that this might not be as bad as it feels. You're headed to a castle, right? Stone walls, roaring fires, a new life where hunger's a memory. Nobody mentions the bells yet. Nobody warns that this isn't just about jesting, it's about dancing on a knife's edge, where one wrong word, one sour jest, could cost your head. As the hamlet fades behind you, its mud-caked roofs swallowed by mist, so does your boyhood. You're no longer a child, you're a gamble, a coin tossed by desperate hands into a world that eats fools for breakfast. You'd always thought the talk would come later, maybe from a grizzled uncle spitting ale and muttering about tavern maids, dodging bandits, or the perils of trusting a peddler's smile. Instead, it comes from a gaunt man in a motley cloak, his voice sharp as a blade, holding a scroll with too many wax seals, each one read as a warning. You're in a castle now, not the grand one you dreamed of, but a drafty keep on the edge of nowhere, its walls damp with the breath of 100 failures, part stable, part dormitory, part ominous rehearsal hall. It smells of straw, sweat, and the faint tang of fear. The other boys are like you, scrawny, silent, wide-eyed, wondering what they've stumbled into. Some clutch patched tunics, others stare at the floor as if it holds answers. Then he arrives, the master Jester, your guide to this strange new world. He's middle-aged, with a voice like a crow's cackle, high and grating, and a face etched with a smirk that's seen too much, too many feasts gone wrong, too many lords offended, too many close calls with a whip or worse. He moves like he's dodging invisible daggers, his motley cloak a patchwork of faded reds and greens, bells jingling with every step like a taunt. You suspect he's survived things he'd rather forget, and his eyes, sharp as a hawk's, seem to weigh your worth before you've even spoke. Boys, he begins, his voice cutting through the murmurs, you've been chosen to serve. Sounds noble, almost like your knights in training. You'll be honed. That's when the air shifts, heavy as a storm cloud rolling in. No soft words, no riddles yet, just cold truth delivered like a tax demand, precise and unyielding. You're told jesting isn't play, it's survival. The court needs laughter, but laughter's a blade, double-edged and treacherous. Too sharp you bleed, too dull you're forgotten. Cast out to beg in the mud, you'll learn to juggle, sing, tumble and mock without dying. You're told lords are fickle, their tempers as changeable as spring weather. Ladies are crueler, their smiles hiding traps. King, they don't laugh unless the room laughs first, and even then you'd better pray it's not at you. The master's words are a litany of warnings. Never outshine a noble, never mock a bishop's faith, never jest about the queen's new gown unless you're sure she likes it. One boy giggles nervously, thinking it's a jest. Another bolts for the door, his bare feet slapping stone. He makes it to the courtyard before 2 guards, their faces bored as stone, remind him freedom's not on the menu. You try to listen, but your ears ring at the phrase, dance on their whim. There's talk of a cap, its bells jingling to mask your fear, to signal your role as a fool who's anything but foolish. The talk ends with a final warning, delivered with the weight of a headsman's axe. This is a noble path. Noble, sure, like a pig's path to the butcher. You're to be shaped, polished, and sent to amuse the most powerful people in the realm, all while knowing one bad jest, one misplaced laugh, could land you in a ditch or worse. As the boys shuffle out, stunned into silence, their feet dragging on the cold stone, you realize this wasn't the talk you expected. No tales of glory or coin, just a map of traps and a promise of bells. You're not here to be a hero. You're here to survive a court that feasts on wit and spits out the careless. They don't schedule your first performance. It just happens, sudden as a thunderclap. 1 minute, you're practicing a clumsy tumble in the keep's yard, dodging the master's switch as it whistles past your ear. The next, your name's called, little fool, still stinging from the village, and 2 guards march you to a hall that smells of roast boar, beeswax and ambition gone sour. The jesting room is bright, too bright. Torches flicker on walls hung with tapestries of hounds and stags, their woven eyes judging you as harshly as the living ones. A long table groans under platters of swan, venison and pies that steam like small volcanoes. The lord's there, a bear of a man with a laugh like thunder, his beard flecked with grease. His court's a sea of silk and suspicion, knights eyeing each other, ladies whispering behind fans and servants scurrying like mice before a cat. The jester who trained you, his motley faded, but his smirk sharp, nods once, like a cook sizing up a questionable chicken. He hands you a cap, its bells jingling like a warning chime. "Don't die," he mutters, and shoves you forward. Then comes the wine, a chipped cup thrust into your hands, said to steady the nerves. It tastes like regret, sour and burning, and your nerves don't steady. They scream, wide awake, pacing the walls of your skull. The next part's a blur, part fear, part instinct kicking in like a mute. You're given a cloth sack of apples to juggle, a lute you barely know, and a moment to prove you're more than a village rat catcher. You step forward, bells jingling, heart hammering, and tell a jest about a knight's horse outsmarting its rider. Silence falls, heavy as a millstone. Your stomach lurches, then a chuckle ripples from the lord's cousin, a wiry man with a scar like a crescent moon. The room exhales, you breathe, you juggle the apples, drop one on purpose, and spin it into a quip about gravity's grudge against night. Laughter spreads, tentative but growing, like fire catching kindling. You live another minute. It's over fast, but it feels like a lifetime, each second stretched taut as a bowstring. You're handed a crust of bread as payment, told to keep practicing, to sharpen your wit before it dulls you. Some jesters burn out here too scared to jest again, their hands trembling at the thought of another haul. Others pray to their bells like relics, clutching them for luck. You clutch your cap, its bells heavy as guilt, and wonder how laughter became the toll for entering a castle. Recovery's worse than the performance. You lie awake on a straw pallet, replaying every word, every chuckle, every near miss where a lord's frown could have ended you. The older jesters, their faces lined like old maps, tell grim tales of banishments, floggings, or worse, a fool who mocked a duke's limp, and was last seen mucking stables in a border keep. You smile, because frowning's a luxury you can't afford. Eventually the fear dulls, and you're upright again, bells and all. You've paid the price. You've passed the gate. You're no longer a village boy chasing rats. You're a jester in training, a fool with a future however sharp-edged it may be. Congratulations, you've been mocked, tested, and inducted into the strangest, most perilous guild in the realm, the Order of the Motley. The Jester's Academy isn't a school with chalk or benches, nor a place of warm encouragement. It's a gauntlet of sneers, rules and men who look like they've laughed at death and regretted it. Your classmates, all boys in various shades of dread, move like they're practicing for their own funerals, their eyes darting as if expecting a trap. Nobody laughs unless it's part of the lesson, and even then, it's a forced cackle, brittle as dry twigs. Someone whispers for home, his voice cracking like a boy half his age. Nobody answers, not even the wind whistling through the keep's cracked walls. Your first lesson is silence, not the quiet kind, but the art of saying nothing while saying everything. You learn when to jest sparingly, only when summoned, how to bow deeply, with bells silent, and where to keep your eyes on the floor, unless a lord demands otherwise. The castle doesn't forgive mistakes, especially from a fool who's supposed to be wise in his folly. Then there's movement. You've been walking wrong your whole life, stomping like a peasant. There's a whole class on gliding through halls, without jingling too loudly. Your bell's a constant betrayer of clumsiness. The master of movement, a wiry jester with a limp and the warmth of a winter ditch, drills you on balance, physical and otherwise. You're taught to juggle, not just apples or clubs, but insults, truths and the lord's ego, keeping all aloft without a crash. Dropping any is a death sentence, socially speaking, or worse. A lord's frown, a lady's smirk, a knight's twitch when his rival's named. They're your scrolls now, more vital than any parchment. Calligraphy's replaced with quips, each word practiced until it's sharp enough to cut but soft enough to soothe. A blade wrapped in etiquette's next, bowing to lords, dodging ladies' fans, and never ever looking at the king, unless he laughs first. If you're caught staring at a noble's wife, her eyes bright as forbidden fruit. You're scrubbing pots by dawn, or worse, explaining yourself to a headsman. Graduation's not marked by a feast or a scroll. One day, the master grunts. You're ready, with the enthusiasm of a man burying a pet, his eyes already on the next boy. Your name's scratched onto a list. The fools deemed sharp enough to enter the great hall, the gilded cage, the court where laughter's a currency and silence is survival. You're no scholar, but you've learned this. One wrong step and you're not just a fool, you're a dead one. The castle gates open, and you're not in England anymore. You're inside a beast of stone and ambition, its halls echoing with clinking goblets, murmured plots, and the rustle of silk heavy with secret. The great hall isn't just a room, it's a battlefield of velvet and venom, its chandeliers casting shadows like traps, its tapestries hiding whispers. You step inside and feel smaller, like a sparrow in a hawk's nest. Your bells a faint jingle, against the roar of feast. No one greets you, no mentor waits with a smile or a map. Your handler, an older jester with a smile like a cracked pot and eyes that miss nothing, mutters, "Don't trip," and vanishes into the crowd. You try to keep up, praying your bells don't jingle too loudly. Jingling's the sound of failure, a signal you're not invisible, and the sights overwhelm. Ladies in silks gliding like specters, their eyes sharp as pins, knights muttering about jewels and debts, their hands never far from daggers, and servants who glare like you've already spilled their wine. Your first task, juggling at a minor feast, a test, disguised as a trifle. Simple, you think, until you realize the torches flicker just enough to blind you, the floors slick with spilled mead, and the crowd's half-drunk, half-ready to throw bones if you bore them. You're handed 3 wooden balls, told not to drop them, and left alone with a room that's a judge, jury, and executioner in velvet. Midway through, a baron passes, his cloak heavy with fur. You freeze. Not bowing could get you flogged. Bowing mid-juggle could land you in the stocks, or worse, the mud outside. You manage a nod, keep the balls aloft and survive. He doesn't notice. You breathe, your heart pounding like a war drum. Supper's grim, a bowl of thin stew and a heel of bread, served in a corner where servants sneer and rats watch hungrily. You eat fast, dawdlings for lords with no one to please. By nightfall, your hands ache from juggling, your back stiff from bowing, and you've smirked so much your face feels like it's plotting mutiny. But you made it through day 1, no stocks, no flogging, no banishment to a border keep. The castle, this labyrinth of feasts, intrigues and secrets, has just begun to notice you, a fool with bells, and a flicker of wit sharp enough to cut through the noise. Let's be clear, in the castle, everyone's ranked, from the king on his throne to the hounds by the hearth, jesters, knights, ladies, even the falcons in the mews. Everyone's got a place and yours is precarious. You're that fool who didn't drop the balls yet, somewhere below the wine steward, but above the scullery maid, who at least doesn't have to smile through You're junior to everyone, even the jester who mumbles to pigeons and forgets his own name, his cap so faded, it's more grey than motley. He's got years on you, and in the castle, years are armor, ranks not written, it's felt, like damp seeping through a dungeon wall. You learn fast. The lord with the jeweled dagger gets the best jests, delivered with a bow. The lady with the embroidered veil might control who sits at the high table, her smile a gatekeeper. The ones who swagger, instead of shuffle, their boots polished, to a mirror gleam, avoid them. Their laughter's a trap, their favor a noose. Minstrel jesters, slightly better, strumming lutes and stealing scraps of noble favor. The record keepers, dull but respected, scribbling who laughed at what, their quills sharp as their tongues. The high court jesters, the ones who whisper jests to the king, their bells polished, their smirks permanent, looking bored by everyone else. You're not there yet. You're stuck with banquet duties, juggling, quipping, and dodging thrown bones. Your cap a target for drunken night. You're handed a lute you barely play, a cap that jingles too loudly, and a warning, don't touch anything that looks noble, which is everything,
From the goblets to the tapestries to the air itself. Despite your low rank, you feel the urge to shine, to prove you're more than a village rat catcher. You keep your jests mild, your bows deep and your eyes on the floor unless summoned. Rumors swirl through the servants' quarters. A jester, promoted to the king's table for a clever riddle. Another exiled for mocking a bishop's hat. Now sweeping stables in a wind-swept keep. You survive your first week without a scandal. A miracle in a court where whispers are sharper than swords. You memorize the Lord's tempers, the best corners to avoid notice, and how to smirk with just enough humility to avoid a whip. Your rank's low, but you're learning. In the castle, knowledge, even for a fool, is power. A blade you wield with a grin. The moment comes, the pinnacle of your trade, the sharpest stage, since someone handed a lute to a madman, and called it art. You're summoned to jest before the king himself, a man whose moods shift like a storm at sea, whose laugh can save you or doom you. You wake before dawn, preparing like you're facing a dragon, your hands trembling as you polish your bells. One wrong jest, one sour note, one misplaced glance, and you're cleaning stables or worse, explaining yourself to a headsman with no sense of humor. Jesting, for the king, is about being invisible until you're not. You don't speak unless prompted. You don't laugh unless he does. You don't breathe too loudly. You glide like a shadow with bells, anticipating whims you're not allowed to question. Your cap a crown of mockery. Today's task, a riddle, deceptively simple until you realize the king's mood swings like a pendulum, and the riddle must amuse without offending, charm without challenging. The court's a minefield. Barons who hate riddles, ladies who hate you, a queen whose laugh is as rare as a unicorn. You step forward, bells jingling like a warning, heart hammering, and deliver a quip about a fox outwitting a hound. Clever but safe. Silence falls, heavy as a guillotine. Your heart stops, your palms sweat, the bells on your cap trembling. Then the king snorts, a sound like a boar waking up, rough and sudden. The room laughs, a wave of relief that nearly drowns you. You're safe, for now. You juggle 3 clubs, toss in a jest about a knight's rusty armor, and bow backward, bells chiming like a victory bell. You slip out before anyone reconsiders, your legs shaking as you reach the shadows. You exhale for the first time in an hour, your breath ragged. Jesting, for the king, requires the balance of a tightrope walker, the silence of a monk, and the nerve of a thief picking a dragon's hoard. You're not a person, you're a performance, a flicker of wit in a world of steel. But you didn't falter. In the castle, that's victory, a triumph rung out in bells. One paradox of jester life, you're invisible yet everywhere, a ghost with a cap. You're not supposed to be noticed, but you're the one juggling during feasts, strumming during quarrels, pretending not to hear Lady Eleanor sobbing over a knight's betrayal, while her rival Lady Beatrice smirks behind a goblet of spiced wine. You learn the court's language, not words but glances, sighs, the way a lord adjusts his belt when lying, or a lady twists her ring when plotting. You know more about the castle's secrets than you ever wanted, not because you're nosy, but because gossip's louder than a trumpet, echoing through halls, kitchens, and privies. You're a sponge for scandals, soaking up whispers you can't unhear. Not yours. You're as far from romance as a mule from a throne. Your bell's a barrier to any lady's glance, but you clean up after the scandals, literal and figurative. Love triangles, betrayals, jewels over a lady's glove, poems, slipped under doors only to be burned by dawn. It's all your stage, though you're never you're not involved, but you're the one sweeping up the spilled wine, the one who forgets to mention the knight's cloak left in a lady's chamber. Sometimes you're stationed by a dais, strumming a lute while a baron flirts with a widow, his wife glaring across the hall. You keep your eyes down, your ears open, your face set, to I'm just a fool not a spy, though you're both. One jester laughed during a lord's botched proposal, a nervous snort that echoed like a death knell. He now polishes armor, in a border fort, still grinning, probably though nobody checks. Some jesters trade secrets for favor, whispering to climb the ladder, swapping a lord's indiscretion for a better cap or a seat by the fire. It's a deadly game, a dance on a blade's edge, the wrong jest, to the wrong ear, and you're mucking stables, or worse, your head's a decoration on a pike. Your job's to know everything, and show nothing, to be a shadow with bells, a fool with a front row seat to a silk-draped tragedy scripted in wine and sealed with wax, while lords burn with ambition, and ladies plot with smiles. You juggle, sing, and pray you never know too much. You're alive, the wine's flowing, the gossip's sharper than your wit. That's a win in a court where laughter's a weapon and silence is armor. By now you've seen things, heard things, dodged things, you hope never make it into ballads or chronicles. You humble jester, know everything, who's bedding whom, which knight fakes his limp for sympathy, which lady writes sonnets to herself, and loses them in the hall for attention. You know which lord drinks when he's nervous, which lady fears hawks, which knight's lost ring is actually pawned for gambling debts. Spoiler, it wasn't lost, someone got greedy, and you found the pawn ticket under a bed. With that knowledge comes power, not the sword-swinging, throne-grabbing kind, but the kind that shifts a room, with a raised eyebrow, a well-timed quip, a conveniently forgotten note. You know the threads of the court's tapestry, and you tug them gently, never enough to unravel the whole. You can't wield power like a lord, not with bells on your cap and a lute as your only weapon, but you wield it like a breeze, unseen, unfelt but capable of chilling a room, or stirring a storm. Need a favor? You know the kitchen fool, whose cousin serves the steward, a man who knows where the spare keys are kept. Need a message passed discreetly? You know which maid loves riddles, and can slip a note into a lady's sleeve. Need a scandal bearer? You know how to misplace a letter for a season, letting it resurface when the danger's past. This makes you dangerous, which is thrilling, and terrifying, mostly terrifying. You master plausible deniability, a jester's greatest art. You never say anything outright. You hint, you jest, you look surprised by your own wit, as if it's a happy accident. My lord, who'd have thought Sir Roland's horse outran his debts? What a coincidence I found this IOU by the stables, right where the wind must have blown it. Information flows to you, like wine at a feast. People seek you out, not for your juggling or your shaky lute chords, but for your knack for knowing, for hearing what's whispered behind tapestries, and never repeating it, unless the price is right. You're the court's most useful fool, like a lute strung with secrets, played softly but heard by all. And though you jest softly, bow often, and smile humbly, everyone knows not to cross you, not because you're loud but because you don't need to be. You're indispensable, a shadow who shapes the light, in the castle that's sharper than a blade, brighter than a crown, and rarer than a lady's honest.
Welcome to Political Survival 101, Jester Edition. Rule 1, never be the wittiest in the room, even if you are, especially if you are. A baron who feels outdone sends you to the kennels faster than you can juggle 3 clubs. Rule 2, seem harmless, not helpful. Harmless jesters get tips. A coin here, a crust there. Helpful ones get blamed when the wine sours or a lord's plan fails. The trick's to look just clever enough, with a dash of I'm too foolish to scheme in your grin, your bells jingling innocently. Rule 3, master the slow jest. New gossip about a lady's affair. Wait 3 days before you quip, letting the rumor ripen. A lord's disgrace? Pause before you mock, lest his allies turn on you. Haste kills. So does wit. So does ambition, which you bury deeper than a miser's gold. Rule 4, flatter carefully, like threading a needle in a storm. A quip about the queen's timeless grace goes far, brightening her eyes and loosening her purse. But too much, and you're a sycophant greasing your own gallows. Your bells a mocking chime. Everyone's got daggers in their smiles, and you'd rather not be the target. Rule 5, shift allies like seasons, never lingering too long with one faction. Cling to one lord, and you burn when he falls. His disgrace a fire that consumes his allies. Swap sides too often, and you're a turncoat, trusted by none. The sweet spot's being trusted by all, loyal to none, a fool who bows to everyone and kneels to no one. You're not betraying, you're redistributing jests, scattering laughter like seeds to see what grows. Above all, keep your face blank, your ears sharp, your thoughts buried deeper than the king's treasury, locked away where no spy can find them. No smirking, no sighing, no hint you're thinking beyond the next riddle. Your motto, I amuse. Subtext, whoever's still laughing. Failure means the stocks. Exile, or a quiet tumble down unlit stairs. Your bells silenced forever. Success means staying exactly where you are, collecting favors, maybe earning a brighter cap next feast. Its bells polished to a gleam. You're not here to win, you're here to not lose. To dance through the court without tripping on a lord's ego or a lady's spite. The castle forgets its heroes but buries its fools in silence, their names erased from the tapestry. With your best vacant grin, you juggle for the passing earl, offer a riddle like your life depends on it. Because it does. You're not just a fool, you're a survivor, a jester who laughs through the danger and lives to jest another day. It turns out you don't need a sword to climb the ladder, just timing, wit, and the ability to juggle while dodging a lord's temper or a lady's fan. Your rise is quiet, a shadow creeping up a sunlit wall. First, you're tasked with the banquet's opening jest, a minor role they say, but the queen notices when your quip about a bishop's hat gets a laugh, her eyes crinkling with rare amusement. You sharpen your delivery, practicing until your words cut like a knife, but land like a feather. Suddenly she remembers you as the fool with the quick tongue, a name that's both praise and peril. Next, you're managing the minstrel rotation, a dull task on its face, but a lute out of tune at last year's feast, nearly sparked a duel between two drunken knights. You avoid such disasters with a hawk's eye, ensuring every chord is perfect, every song a balm to noble tempers. You're summoned to jest in the king's private chamber, a room of oak and secrets, its air thick with the scent of wax and ambition. A lady-in-waiting naps under a tapestry, her snores a soft counterpoint to your bell. You juggle, quip and dodge a flung goblet with the grace of a cat, your heart pounding, but your smile steady. You learn more too much. The king's favorite wine, the baron's secret debt, the lady who hides letters in her sleeve. Soon, you're not just the fool with the bell. You're master of jests, keeper of the king's mirth, or overseer of the banquet's laughter. Titles as fleeting as smoke but heavy with access. You touch the threads of the court's tapestry, tugging gently to shift its weave. Barons nod in halls, their eyes wary but respectful. Ladies slip you notes, their words coded in flattery. Servants bow lower when you pass, as if bells matter more than birth. Though you know better, perception's everything, and you've learned to shape it like a sculptor with clay. The higher you rise, the thinner the air, the sharper the knives. You learn to spot a poisoned apple by its sheen, sense a plot in a lord's too loud chuckle, hear a trap in a lady's too sweet laugh. You're in the realm of influence, the shadowy layer beneath the throne, where a fool's jest can sway a council or spark a feud, and all without raising a fist, a voice or a dynasty. You were made a fool to be less than a man, a creature of bells and mockery. Yet here you are, steering the court's laughter, a master of mirth in a game of knives. Your voice, high with nerves, carries weight. Your dignity, negotiable, buys you time. Your power, absolute in its quiet way, shapes the court from the edge. All rise for the jester, the fool who outwits the wise. You survive not by outshining but by outlasting, a shadow that lingers when brighter lights burn out. Others fall spectacularly, publicly, with a thud that echoes through the hall. It starts with whispers, a dropped jest, a lady's scorn, a riddle too sharp for the king's mood. Suddenly Lord Cedric's reflecting in a border keep which is court-speak forgone since Sunday, maybe forever. You spot the signs, fewer smiles, guards where there weren't any, the jester shuffle where yesterday's wit carries firewood and avoids eyes, his bells muffled by shame. The loud fools go first, thinking the king's laugh is a shield, their quips bold until a baron takes offense. The clever ones follow, their riddles mistaken for rebellion, their wit too sharp for a court that prefers its truths. Even jesters fall, your peers' confidence one day, sweeping stables the next, their caps traded for One poor soul got exiled for sneezing during a lord's toast. the timing deemed suspicious. Another mocked a duke's new cloak and now tends pigs, his laughter a memory. You master the art of absence, a fool's greatest trick. When tempers flare, you're tuning lutes in a quiet corner. When scandal breaks, you're juggling in the yard, your bell's a harmless chime. You never laugh too loud, never frown too long, your emotions trimmed like your future was, cut to fit the court's demand. When your rival falls, that smug jester with the too tight cap who quoted Ovid like he wrote it, you don't gloat, you offer a sad nod, your bells jingling mournfully, then check who's taking his spot and which jest they botch. Every fall leaves a gap, and you love gaps, especially if they come with a better cloak, a seat closer to the fire, or a chance to whisper a quip that shifts the room. You didn't push them, you just outlasted them, a fool who knows the court's rhythm and dances to it without missing a step. As another fool's led away for review, his bells clinking like a funeral dirge, you sip your ale, bow politely, and pretend not to notice the guards swapping caps. It's not about being pure, it's about being forgettable, a shadow nobody bothers to chase. For now, after decades of quick quips, perfect juggles and dodging 3 plots with a single jest, you've reached the final stage of jesterdom, retirement, or the idea of it as fragile as a lute string. There's no feast for fools, no golden bells or tearful farewells, no minstrel to sing your praises. One morning you're told, your jests are no longer needed, the words both a reward and a warning, delivered with the cold courtesy of a tax collector. The few who make it this far are a strange lot, ghosts of mirth with tales nobody dares repeat, their caps faded but their eyes sharp with memory. Some shuffle to villages, their motley smelling of wine and secrets, telling tales to wide-eyed children who don't believe them. Others linger in market towns, paid for in favors they shouldn't have kept, their bells tucked away like relics of a war they won. The paranoid stay, not jesting, just haunting feasts, offering quips nobody asked for, their laughter a hollow echo. You're smarter, or at least more cautious. You've secured a cottage far enough from the castle that gossip doesn't travel, but close enough to hear when a lord falls or a lady's scandal breaks. You don't need the game anymore, just the echo of it, the faint chime of bells in your dream. Retirement's no Eden, no golden reward for a life of wit. You wake at dawn still reaching for your cap, its bells long silent. You correct a peddler's posture, scold a tinker for a clumsy jest, wince when someone juggles badly, dropping apples like a novice. It's instinct laced with memory, a fool's muscle memory mixed with trauma. Call it courtly sorrow, the weight of 1,000 jests, and 100 near miss. The irony, after sacrificing youth, pride and a normal life, your reward is quiet, not joy, not fame, just the absence of daggers, real or whispered. Nobody poisons your stew, nobody plots behind your hedge, nobody mistakes your silence for treason. But some nights you miss it, the tension, the laughter, the way a quip could shift a dynasty or silence a hall. So you sit by your fire, sipping ale, still sharp, still silent, and wonder how the new fool's faring back at court, probably fumbling a riddle, sweating under his cap. Poor lad's using the wrong bells, you're sure of it. You smirk, not cruelly, but as a graduate, a fool who's outlived the court's sharpest edges. In the castle, that's as close to royalty as a jester gets. In the grand tapestry of medieval courts, kings are carved in stone, knights sung in ballads, ladies painted in verse, and jesters. You're the bells stitched into the hem, essential, unseen, forgotten by name, but not by echo. You left no heirs, you weren't meant to. Your bells a barrier to legacy, but you shaped 3 generations of courtiers, taught fools to juggle without dying, and once stopped a duel with a quip about a knight's muddy boots. That counts, even if no scribe records. Your legacy isn't in tapestries, those were for lords with titles and sons. But every jest you landed, every scandal you buried, every crisis you dodged with a grin rippled through history, a wave that touched thrones and toppled ego. Years later a minstrel sings of a fool whose wit saved a feast, a riddle that cooled a king's temper. He doesn't name you, nobody does. You leave your cottage to a tinker's son, who builds a bench in your honor, carved with a riddle so vague even scholars bicker over its meaning. Your name fades, but your quips endure, whispered in halls when a lord laughs too easily, or a lady's scandal vanishes too neatly. Some say you were a myth,
a tale for nervous new fools to explain why nobody dares juggle near the throne. Either way you did, you carved laughter from danger, rose without a sword, and became vital by being absurd, a masterpiece of mirth, through absence. So as you sip ale by that fire, you think back, the fear, the feasts, the secrets, and laugh, a soft chuckle that carries no bells. Not bad for a fool, everyone expected to vanish in motley. History may not sing your name, but it hums your jests in every hall, and every whispered plot. In the castle, that's immortality. Step inside the towering stone halls of a medieval castle, and you'd quickly realize silence was not its natural state. Behind the thick walls, beneath the flicker of torchlight, sound was a weapon, a currency, a tapestry woven to display power and wealth. The ones who spun this web of noise were the entertainers, minstrels, jesters, dancers, who filled the cold stone with life. Their roles were more than amusement, they were the pulse of the court, stitching together noble pride and peasant awe with every note and jest. A castle without entertainment was a crown without jewels, functional, but stripped of its shine. Minstrels were the voice of the castle, their songs carrying stories across kingdoms, with lutes plucked soft as a lover's whisper, harps that shimmered like starlight, or drums that thumped like a warhorse's charge. They turned drafty halls into theaters of memory. A minstrel could sing of a knight's valor in a land he'd never seen, or hint at a lady's scandal with a verse just vague enough to avoid the stocks. Their music preserved lineages, victories, and betrayals in a world where ink was rare and parchment rare. To hear your name in a minstrel song was to be etched into eternity. To be ignored was to fade like smoke. Nobles paid handsomely for such immortality, their feasts a stage for ballads that proclaimed their greatness to all who listened. Jesters, though, were the court's wild card, their bells a warning and a lure. Dressed in motley, they danced on the edge of danger, mocking lords with a freedom no knight dared claim. Their jests were a pressure valve, easing tensions in a hall thick with ambition. But one wrong quip, one jest too sharp, and they'd find themselves in a dungeon or worse. The clever ones like you learned to wrap truth in folly, to make a baron laugh at his own flaws while pretending it was the one. Jesters juggled, sang, tumbled, and sometimes whispered truth that shifted alliances, their bells chiming a reminder that honesty came best in a fool's cap.
Tournaments shook the castle grounds, turning war into spectacle. Knights thundered down the tiltyard, lances splintering, shields cracking, the crowd roaring as a champion fell into the dust. These were no mere games but stage dramas of power, proving a lord's wealth and martial might. Banners snapped in the wind, trumpets blared, and ladies tied favors to their chosen knights, weaving romance into the violence. Melees, chaotic mock battles, blurred sport and slaughter, knights bruised or broken for glory. For the lord hosting, a tournament was propaganda, his castle a beacon of prestige that drew knights from across Christendom, their presence a testament to his power. Falconry brought the skies into the castle's grasp, a dance of elegance and savagery. A hawk on a noble's glove was a badge of rank, its type peregrine for kings, kestrel for lesser lords, dictated by custom as rigid as a crown. Training a bird took patience and coin, a falconer's skill turning wild talons into loyal hunters. Watching a hawk stoop, wings folded, plunging to strike a hare, was a spectacle of grace and death, a reminder that even nature bent to noble will. Ladies joined the hunt, their jeweled gloves cradling hooded birds, their outings a blend of sport and diplomacy, each kill a small triumph celebrated with feasts and tales. Feasts were the castle's heart, a theater where food, music, and ritual merged. Tables groaned under roasted boar, swans in their plumage, and wines spiced with cloves. Minstrels played, jesters jested, and dancers spun, turning the great hall into a living tapestry. The lord at the high table, elevated above his guests, displayed his wealth with every dish, every note, every laugh. To dine close to him was to claim status. To be seated far was a quiet slight. Exotic spices, rare fruits, and dyed dishes dazzled the eye, proof that hunger was a stranger to this court. Yet beneath the revelry, alliances were forged, rivalries sharpened, and the lord's power reaffirmed with every toast. Pageantry turned the castle into a stage of symbolism. Processions of costumed nobles, maidens as peace, knights as justice, wove politics into spectacle, their verses praising the Lord's reign. For peasants allowed in the courtyard, these displays were a glimpse of splendor. For nobles, a reminder of their place in a gilded hierarchy. Every laugh, every gasp was a lesson in power. The castle, not just a fortress, but a cathedral of performance, where stone hummed with the heartbeat of ambition. Beyond the great hall, entertainment spilled into the countries. Hunting was a lord's privilege, hounds baying as nobles rode through forests, their kills a rehearsal for war and a claim on the land. Inside, chess and backgammon filled quiet evenings, their strategies mirroring the court's intrigues. Storytelling by the fire, tales of Arthur or Troy, wove chivalry into the castle's fabric, while women's embroidery and music practice added refinement to the household's pride. Festivals opened the gates to all, blending ranks in a fleeting dance of unity, though the Lord's shadow loomed, reminding everyone that even joy served his rule. In the spring of 1190, a call echoed across Europe, stirring hearts from noble halls to peasant hovels. The Third Crusade was launched, not by a pope's sermon, but by the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin, a wound that cut deep into Christendom's pride. Kings like Richard the Lionheart and Philip Augustus took the cross, but so did countless others, minstrels, peddlers, and performers who saw in the crusade a chance for coin, adventure, or divine favor. These were no knights, but their songs and jests would carry the crusade's story, weaving its triumphs and tragedies into the tapestry of Europe's memory. Families of minstrels, jugglers, and storytellers packed lutes and bells into carts, trudging eastward beside knights and pilgrims. Their lives were a pilgrimage of art, not faith, their songs a currency to buy bread or safety. Villages emptied as troops joined the march, their children clutching drums, their wives singing to keep spirits high. The roads to the Holy Land were not just paths of war but ribbons of song, laughter, and tales spun under starlit skies. The journey was brutal. Hunger gnawed at performers as fiercely as at soldiers, their meager earnings bartered for moldy bread or brackish water. Children danced for scraps, their bare feet bleeding on rocky paths. Women wove tales of crusader heroes to cheer weary camps, their voices hoarse from dust and cold. Bandits and deserters preyed on stragglers, and many a minstrel's lute was smashed or stolen, their songs silenced by hunger or steel. Yet these performers persisted, their jests and ballads a lifeline for crusaders, reminding them of home, honor, and the cause they bled for. In Acre's siege, performers found their stage among the chaos. As knights stormed walls, minstrels sang of valor, their music drowning out screams. Jesters juggled between trebuchets, their bells a defiant chime against the thunder of war. Families of performers huddled in camps, their children fetching water under arrow showers, their songs a fragile shield against despair. When Acre fell, their ballads spread the news faster than heralds, carrying Richard's name to distant court. But for every triumph, there were losses. Children starved, wives widowed, troops scattered by battle or disease. Others returned, their tales of Saladin and Richard, shaping Europe's legends. Their legacy was not in castles but in the stories they carried, the laughter they sparked in weary camps, the songs that outlived the sword. These families of performers, fragile yet fierce, proved that a crusade was not just fought with steel but sung with heart, their voices echoing long after the battles faded. The medieval household was no mere family but a fortress of roles, where lords, kin, and servants lived under one roof, bound by duty and hierarchy. The lord, like a Roman paterfamilias, ruled absolute, his word law over wife, children, and retainer. His hall was both home and court, its hearth a symbol of unity, its walls a stage for power. Privacy was a myth, lives unfolded in shared spaces, from great halls to cramped kitchens, each role woven into the household's rhythm. Children were raised for duty, not freedom. Boys trained in arms or letters, their games mimicking war or governance. Girls learned needlework and household management, their virtues tied to obedience. Discipline was harsh, whips for laziness, scolding for defiance, yet play existed with hoops and tales of knights shaping young minds for their roles. Servants and retainers, often bound by loyalty or debt, were the household's backbone, cooking, cleaning, and guarding, their lives entwined with the Lord's but never equal. Women wielded quiet power, managing kitchens and weaving alliances through marriage or gossip. The lady of the house, though subordinate, shaped the household's reputation, her grace a mirror of her lord's prestige. Feasts and festivals were her domain, where her oversight ensured the lord's wealth shone. Yet tensions simmered, sons chafed under fathers, wives navigated mothers-in-law, and servants bore the weight of obedience. Religion bound the household to the divine, with prayers at the hearth and saints' days marked by feasts. The Lord led rituals, his authority sanctified by faith, while ancestors were honored in tales and relics, their memory a chain linking past to future. Meals were the household's pulse, from simple suppers to lavish banquets, each bite reinforcing rank and unity. The household was a microcosm of the kingdom, its order a reflection of the Lord's rule, its laughter and labor a testament to survival in a world of stone and steel.